the Hot Country Podcast. Interviews with singers and songwriters from yesterday and today. Visit hotcountrypodcast.com for information on sponsors that make this show possible. Here's your host of the Hot Country Podcast, Chris McKay.
And welcome to another edition of the Hot Country Podcast. Hey, to hear this podcast with the music that's talked about, be sure to listen to Long Neck Lounge Radio. It's available at thelongnecklounge.com. My guest today for this podcast is singer, songwriter, entertainer, and a man that knows what serving those that serve us really means. It's country artist Michael Peterson, next on the Hot Country Podcast. And I am honored to welcome to the microphone of the Hot Country Podcast, Mr. Michael Peterson. How are you, sir?
Great. I'm doing really great, Chris. Thank you for asking. How are you doing?
I'm upright, I'm mobile, I'm blessed. So, I you know what? I got the trifecta today. And,
yeah, good.
So just to clarify, we're recording this in July of 2021. Shows are opening up, and craziness abounds. But I bring this up just so we know where we are in the timeline, but I have to tell you a little backstory, if you don't mind. You were entering into the country world in 97 as I was leaving the country world. So after 25 years, it was time for me to move on. We opened up the outreach program. There were just so many things that we were doing. But the one thing I have to tell you, Michael, is I was your number one fan from your debut release. When I first heard the tune From Here to Eternity, I would have bet a bottom dollar, you, sir, were going to be the number one wedding song around the world. Had I known 22 years later, I would still be hearing that song at weddings and processionals. Amazing. It didn't surprise me, but I was amazed. And this is one of those stories where you always get freebies in radio. You could not talk to a DJ without opening up the trunk of his car. And there were CDs and promos and T-shirts and bumper stickers. I had to actually go out and buy your CD. So that has to tell you something. But my goodness, what's it like some 20 years later when asked to do so, still sing out Drink, Swear, Steal, and Lie?
There's a sense of appreciation and gratitude. That's probably the most prominent emotion. You know, I think there's some pride there. You know, you're proud of what you were a part of. But, you know, the pride factor was probably stronger in the beginning. And as you reflect on it over the decades, you realize that, you know, an awful lot of really talented people, you know, weren't fortunate enough to have that kind of success. And so on some level, you can't take credit for it. Like in the global scheme of it, things, you know, you can say, hey, I contributed, co-wrote it, and I sang it, and you know, I got out there and worked to promote it. And really, it's the biggest feeling, and I think for me, the most appropriate feeling is just a feeling of gratitude. Like, it just puts a smile on my face that people still like that music. From Here to Eternity, Drink, Swear, Steal, and Lie, When the Bartender Cries. I mean, these are songs that all these years later people say are some of their favorite songs, you know, and you just feel grateful, you know, and you feel joy. I feel joy when I have a chance to play those songs for people now still, and people are singing along, or they're hearing it for the first time and they're going, oh, and then makes them smile or makes them feel something. So just really a lot of gratitude is what I feel.
Well, you mentioned a couple of the songs that you say you have gratitude for, but you can't forget Too Good to Be True. That was also just a favorite of mine. So well,
thanks. That was really a groundbreaking record in the sense that the rhythmic structure of that song, that recording, that kind of a hip hop feel with a country lyric and chord changes and a country theme had never really been done before with a hit record. There may have been some people that were maybe doing it that I'm not aware of. You know, it was really the first hit record or the second, I guess, depending on, you know, Shania Twain had a record that came out that had a similar kind of a blend of feels. But it was a groundbreaking record nonetheless, whether it was the first or the second. And that feels fun, you know. And again, that's one of those songs, the guy that I co-wrote it with, Gene Pastilli, God rest his soul, you know, was just a classic American songwriter. He wrote Sunday will never be the same. You know, when he was 18 years old, working in the Brill Building in New York. So, I mean, you know, Spanking Our Gang had a huge #1 worldwide hit with that song, and you know, he wrote "Too Gone for Too Long" for Randy Travis, which was a ASCAP Song of the Year. You know, so he produced Jim Croce. He was one of the founders of Manhattan Transfer. I mean, this is a guy that really had done a lot in his career and had become a mentor and a friend of mine. And when I ever hear that lyric, I see his gift in that, and it makes me smile because we became such dear friends. And
one of the things that the listeners know about me is that I'm a real big fan of country songwriters, and especially those that really go outside the box and then bring it back into the circle. I know that sounds like a weird phrase, but it's
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, Mac McAnally was one where you would hear one blend, and then the very next song you'd go, Mac wrote that. It was just that ability to bring that together. Again, when you buy a CD and you stick it in the car and you listen to all the songs over and over and over again, one of my favorite songs, and I'm very sorry it never did release that I know of, was the duet you did with Travis Tritt, and it's my favorite tune of all time. I finally passed the bar.
Oh, and that's great.
Yeah, and I know it was just a fun, tongue-in-cheek kind of tune, but I tell you, there was some really creative writing in there, and one of them that always kind of caught my eye, and I'm going to paraphrase here. It was like, I never dreamed the neon night school would ever be so hard. Yeah. And boy, can I relate to that with some of the people I've hung out with over the years. Yeah. These guys all need a working man's PhD from Aaron Tippin, and they also deserve to get the night school passing there in the bar.
Yeah, of course.
So it all kind of comes together. Out of all the songs that you have written or co-written, do you have a favorite? Is there a #1 that if somebody said, hey, Michael Peterson, play the one song you love the most?
I would have to say no. There's not one favorite, but there's a handful of favorites. And you know, the interesting reflection on that for me is that probably most of those in that handful are songs that people have never heard. You know, I've written a lot of songs between 1997, 98, 99. I mean, that's 22 years ago. You know, and I've written a lot of songs over the last 22 years. A lot of people don't know that, you know, when I left major labels and the spotlight that inherently carries with it, that I continued to make records. I've made 18 albums in my career, and 10 of them, maybe 11 of them have been in the last, 20 years. But people don't know about it because it wasn't being promoted by major labels.
Gotcha, but a lot of people don't realize how eclectic you are. Not only in your writing, but in the music that you actually produce with others. I mean, you've done basically every genre of music, correct?
Well, I've written songs that have been recorded, by Hall of Famers and Grammy winners in 7 different genres of music.
Yeah.
So that I think is a reflection of my love for songwriting and my sense that a great song can usually find a home in a lot of different genres, and I have availed myself towards writing with people that are outside of the typical, like, let's write a country song way of thinking. Mm-hmm. So that has opened some real opportunities for my songs to be heard outside of country. And, after all these years, I'd have to say, I really think of myself not as a country singer or a country artist. I really just think of myself as a writer and as an artist and as a singer. And I've been fortunate to have hits in country music, but a lot of people that are not country music fans would appreciate the music that I've made.
Sure.
And so to me, that's not so much a declaration. Like, I'm not saying I'm not country. I'm just saying that there's been so many people over the years that are not country fans that have appreciated what I've done, that I really have come to the place of thinking of myself more in a more universal sense than that my music has an appeal to people that love, well-crafted songs, memorable melodies that have, a meaning to them. And that can go really everywhere from adult contemporary to Americana, country, folk. I love great songs.
I'm always interested how somebody can take somebody's, as you said, a craft, and write a song, and then another artist will take it. I hate to use that phrase that you hear on all the TV shows where, oh, you made that your own. But it
Yeah.
really does carry a lot of weight when you. I remember I was at an event. It was a wedding, and during the processional, the guitarist was playing this very pretty melodic sound as the bride made her way in. And it was one of those things that kind of haunted me. It was like, what the heck is that song? Couldn't remember, So after the wedding, I did go up to the musician and I said, can you tell me what song you were playing at the processional? And he laughed and he said, sound familiar? And I was like, yes, and it was haunting.
Yeah.
He had done a completely different rendition of the theme song from The Price is Right.
Oh, isn't
And-
that hilarious?
and
I
it-
love that. See, that's beautiful creativity right there.
It was one of those things where I stood there, my jaw hit the floor, and then playing it back in my head, I realized, oh my God, that was the
Yeah.
theme from The Price is Right. But
Somebody I love
can,
that story.
yeah, and people, and in the same way with you, I have to tell you, I have got some pretty eclectic likes in country music. I can hear something most people don't hear, or I can bring people into that sound and say, hey, listen to this for just a moment. And one of the things I learned, I was talking with Jeff Carson about his first song, which was Yeah, Buddy. And it was one of those songs that never broke the top 60, but we just played the hell out of it on the radio station. The listeners loved it. I loved it. It was just one of those things where you can hear where that's going to go. And one of the artists that you worked with, and I'd like to see if you got some story behind it, was somebody a lot of people don't know by name, Robert Ellis Oral. And you had the opportunity to work with him, and I hear a story here that he's the one that told you to go off and try to get a recording contract.
First of all, Robert Ellis Oral is, for me, hands down, the most talented artist, writer that I ever worked with closely.
Amen.
In Nashville. This guy, this guy had songs falling out of his pockets. Literally, like I remember when I first started working with Robert, he was signed to a publishing deal, I think, with BMG. And they used to call him, his nickname around the offices at BMG was because his initials are REO.
Right.
Okay, so they used to call him REO Speedwriter.
So Speedwriter, got it.
Right, because he would write, like this guy would write 4 or 5 songs in a day.
Amazing.
This is and not just lousy songs. I mean,
Songs.
really clever. So Robert and I got to know each other because I don't want to bore your audience with too long of a story, but when I was living in Seattle, one of my first trips to Nashville, I met this guy who was a executive vice president of publishing at BMG. And he asked me to come to his office. I met him in a Shoney's. I was standing at the salad bar, and he walked up to me and asked me who I was, and he gave me his card, and he said, come see me. So I showed up at his office with my guitar, thinking I was going to play some songs for him. And as I reached for my guitar case, he said, "No, I don't want you to play any music for me." I'm like, to myself, I'm thinking,
okay,
what? Like, why am I here? And basically what he said to me was, how often are you here in town? And I said, well, it's my second time here in a couple of years. And he said, well, if you want anybody in this town to take you seriously, you're going to have to be here a lot more often. And he said, if you can, start showing up around here a lot more often and show me you're serious, I'll see if I can help you. So essentially, I went home and I decided that I needed to get there a lot more often. So over the next almost 3 years, I went a week a month to Nashville from Seattle. And during those 3 years and that week a month that I went, I began meeting people, right?
Sure.
And I would go just hang out at all the songwriter haunts and just open mics and all of those things and just listen, because I wanted to understand the room I was in before I started playing my cards, because I just thought, you could play the wrong card here, and you think you're good enough and you're not. And so anyway, so I took my time over 2-3 years and went a week, a month, learned a lot, met a lot of people. One of the people I met was a guy named Pat Finch, and Pat was a A&R guy at EMI Music Publishing. And so, long story short, Pat and I met, and Pat wanted to sign me to a music publishing deal. So I ended up not signing that deal, which is a whole other story for another time. But because I had this relationship with Pat, and Pat believed in me, Pat wanted to introduce me to Robert Ellis Orrell, who was looking for an act to produce. And so he introduced me to Robert. Robert and I met. We really hit it off. We wrote a song our first day together, and we were off to the races. And so, I don't know, a week or two, maybe a month into that process, I don't remember exactly, but somewhere early in the process, he said to me, hey, I'd like to introduce you to another buddy of mine and see if he would be interested in us co-producing you. And so he introduced me to Josh Leo. And Josh, had been the head of A&R for RCA Records. He produced tons of, he produced Vision in the Dark for Alabama, right. Had a bunch of number ones with them. Anyway, so those two guys together, those guys were both a force in the community. Leaders, had relationships. So, through Josh, I ended up getting a publishing deal at Warner Chappell. Well, then I had, a major publisher, two major producers began to advocate for me to get a record deal. So they started setting up meetings with record companies. And that's a brief journey through how I ended up with a record deal. And it was, at that point, it was 1997 when I got my deal. And at that point, I had been working towards getting a deal probably since 84.
Overnight success, were you?
Right. So yeah, but so my point is that when it happened really quickly, but it was a long journey getting there. I started off in gospel music, writing for Denise Williams' production company and the management deal with them, and made some gospel records that made some noise in that arena. And you made some custom albums along the way. And,
sure.
It was this thing in me that I wrote 20 to 25 songs a year, whether anybody liked them or not, whether anybody paid me or not. Like, I was just completely passionate, and I was eat up with it, as they would say in Nashville. And I grew and I grew and I grew and I grew. I was like that kid you throw in the pool and he can't swim, and you pull him out and he jumps back in. That was me. I just was determined that I had something to offer of value. And so a lot of lessons learned, a lot of baby steps forward, steps backward, baby steps forward, relationships. But it was that, I think, that determination and that consistency of purpose and the joy that I had doing it that eventually led to, some opportunities for me to succeed on a higher level.
Gotcha. And it's amazing the backbone. When people see somebody on their own, whether solo or heading up a band, they don't realize the hundreds of people that are behind them and still there on the stage supporting them as they make that journey. So it's been kind of fun to watch you. I mean, here you are. I know guys my age that are ready to retire, and they either rebuild old cars, they go play golf, they go travel. I decided I'm going to go travel, but I want to listen to the radio station that plays the music that I like. And I figured, well, if I can't find it, I'm gonna make it.
I love that.
So that's what I did. And here I was able to pick up the phone and call some old friends in the industry and say, hey, listen, come on the air with me, talk to me, share with me what you're doing now. And it's so fun to bring those relationships back together. And then there's people like you, where I sat back and said, I've always wanted to talk to Michael Peterson. Here's an opportunity to do so. I do have to ask, though. I mean, it was a number one song on the charts. It ranked, I believe, you could correct me if I'm wrong, it's like number 3 wedding song ever. Where did From Here to Eternity come from?
Well, it started, I was living in Seattle. Everywhere I looked, I saw song titles. Everywhere I looked, I saw song ideas. I was just obsessed. That's the word I'm looking for. I was just obsessed with songwriting and growing as a writer. So one day I was a video store, back when they used to have video stores.
Sure.
And just, looking to rent a VHS tape. And I saw the Frank Sinatra movie, From Here to Eternity. And I just thought, that'd be an interesting song title. Of course, I had no idea, because I hadn't seen the movie, that there actually was a song of that title already.
Right.
That was written for the movie. So I just wrote it down in my little songwriting book, my notes. So I fast forward, I don't know, a couple of years, and I'm in a writing appointment with Robert Ellis Orrell. He says, "What do you want to write about today?" And I said, "Well, Robert, there's a lot of wedding songs. I've never heard anybody sing a song that was a proposal song, like the song that happens, you're actually in the moment of the proposal." And I said, "Wouldn't it be amazing if we could write a song that would help that guy or that girl who's making this proposition, help them through that moment? Like, could we write a song that they would be able to use to just have the ring in their hand and their loved one by them, and just tell that person that they're going to propose to, who doesn't know what the moment is about, just listen to this song."
Right.
And then at the end, the song will have basically popped the question, and then they can just hold the ring out, right? So that was our vision. And so we sat down to write it. It's really where it came from. And, you have a lot of visions when you write songs. And few of them, like I said earlier, you just have gratitude because, the idea that we could have this feeling, and hope, and that it would actually surpass our wildest dreams, that it came true. Literally thousands and thousands and thousands of people have found that song to be really an important key song for them. That even after all these years, I still get, every month, I get a dozen emails from people saying they either want to use it or going to use it or did use it and remember it and love it and want to thank me. So, that's one of those legacy pieces that you're just grateful for.
I guess if you're going to be known for anything in the world, being the guy that put together the best wedding song, that's not a bad reputation to have.
Well, it's a gift, and I receive it with gratitude.
There you go. And it was your first and only number one. And
it was the first and only Billboard number one.
Billboard.
And I think a lot of times, people, I think sometimes, and it's just a bit of a different perspective. Is that there are other charts around the world?
Yes, there are.
There's CMT, which is a force.
Yeah.
There's charts in Europe. There's charts in Canada. So for me, I've actually had 14 number ones, or I shouldn't say 14 number one songs, but my songs have hit number one 14 times on various charts around the world. I've only had one number one Billboard chart, but I've had 14 number ones. 14 times my songs have hit number one on various charts. Everything from Gavin, R&R, CMT in the U.S. to Hot Disc over in Europe. Anyway,
it's still a claim to fame. It's still,
it's fun. And it's beautiful to say at a Billboard number one. That's a big deal.
It is, and you were Male Artist of the Year, right, for Billboard in '97.
I was.
Yeah. So I mean, if you can take the gratitude and the honors and the accolades, those aren't bad ones to have. I said,
they're beautiful.
Yeah, I have met more artists in my lifetime that have never charted a number one song, but they're still some of the most recognizable. So I get the chart thing. I was in broadcasting. It was like, well, if we're not going to do Billboard, we're going to do Gavin. If we're not doing Gavin, we're doing R&R. And it was like everybody had a different way of ranking. I'm still going back to my old school, and that is the listener knows what they like, and they know what they want to hear. Again, I'll continue to program a radio station based on listener versus programmer. I can't be influenced by the dollar, which it seems to be radio today, the pay and play and all the craziness. I love a good songwriter. I mean, you've mentioned Robert Ellis Orrell. When he teamed up with Curtis Wright, that was a wonderful pairing. Radio didn't give them the accolades they needed. But their music, we're still playing. They're recognizable and people like them. So we've done From Here to Eternity. Can't walk away from Drink, Swear, Steal, and Lie. Never a number one on Billboard, but that was, I mean, there wasn't a, I'm trying to remember during that time your song was released.
The only reason why that song wasn't a number one on Billboard? There's only one reason.
What's that?
Well, there was one station in the country that wouldn't play it.
See, that's what's wrong with it.
And they wouldn't play it because this, and I respect this. Everybody has a right to their standards. There was a program director at a station in Arizona that had as his standard, his ethic was that they would never play songs that had a curse word in it. And Drink, Swear, Steal, and Lie has the word hell in it.
Yeah.
And the word hell was used specifically. It wasn't used as a sort of filler word.
Right.
There'd be hell to pay.
Right.
So it wasn't used in the context of a curse. It wasn't like, oh, hell, or something like that. It was, there'd be hell to pay. I never thought of that as a way that you would use it as a curse. But anyway, for whatever reason, this guy, for his personal reasons, said he would never play a song that had a curse word in it. And so because of that one station, Drink, Swear was not a number one, and we got beat out that week by Garth and I forget who else. But
you know what? It's a shame because it was definitely a number one song in my books.
Well, in Impact, it's had 2.5 million airplays.
Yeah, I mean, this is
it's the most spun record of my career. It's bigger, like From Here to Eternity, somewhere like 1.6 or 1.7 million. Drink, Swear is almost 2.5 million airplays.
Michael, you live in Las Vegas, so if you were to take a look regionally at the music that's hot in the Southwest versus what's hot right now in the Northeast, two different animals.
Right.
And to have one guy dictate from New York City what everybody should be playing, I don't get that. So I hope more and more, if people don't know,
I'm totally with you, man. Like if you go to Alaska, you don't want to hear the same songs you hear if you're in New Orleans.
Exactly.
Shouldn't it reflect the culture that it's in?
It should be regional. When I'm the only, and I mean this with all humbleness and sincerity, I think I was the only guy playing Chris Ledoux on the radio before anybody knew who Chris Ledoux was. Right. And then to get him to get recognized by Garth Brooks, awesome. That just got him the notoriety he deserved. But my local people here, these are the rodeo guys. These are the ones that know who Chris Ledoux is. These are the people that want to listen to the music and go dancing Friday and Saturday night at the rodeo dance. So why wouldn't you play it? Except the other country station in town is, oh, no, we're not going to play that. He's not on the charts. So I think you have to listen to what people want to listen to. And you, sir, your long list of music. I admire you beyond the professional side. I admired you as a fan. I love Drink, Swear, Steal, and Lie. You can say hell anytime that you want to in my book. From Here to Eternity, you know what? Probably long after you and I are both gone, that's still going to be used as a wedding song. So that's such a wonderful legacy to have. And
it is. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Now, what about Too Good to Be True? What made that jump out at you that you'd want to add that to the CD and then release it?
That song started. I was on the treadmill at the YMCA getting a workout, and there was TVs up in the YMCA that were playing MTV. I'm sitting there sort of trapped, listening to MTV, and couldn't change the channel, and TLC, a song by TLC, came on. I thought, wow, I really like that beat. And I thought, this thought popped into my head. I wonder if anybody's ever written a country song that has like a hip hop kind of groove, like blended those two things. I wonder what that would be like. So, within a day or two of that, I kind of had an idea of what I thought it should be. I didn't have a title yet. And I went to writing appointment with my friend Gene Pastilli. that's what came out. We started just, really, we had we didn't have a melody. We didn't have a lyric idea. We didn't have a title. We just sat down together and started playing around with this groove, and that's what showed up. You don't get it, and you're not going to get it anymore, right? Lines like that in the song would put a smile on my face, and I loved the feel of it. It was the kind of thing that made you want to dance, and it was something different. And I always believed that, in a room full of people with hats, be the person not wearing a hat, right?
Right.
Right. So if you want to stand out, do something different. And so, as we began to piece together which songs should be on the album, that was one that really stuck out to me as just being different, very catchy, as my friends used to say, as catchy as a cold.
Yeah,
and,
that would work.
And which may not be appropriate in COVID era, but it just sticks with you, and people liked it. It was ground, it just got people's attention. The songs of mine that I've written that people have loved the most often come back to themes that have something to do with drinking.
Right. Well, it's a country song.
Yeah, right.
Steve Goodman summed that up best.
Right. And I don't have, an alcoholism in my family. I've never had a problem with that.
Right.
So it's a bit of a head scratcher to me sometimes why it showed up that way. But I suppose it's a reflection of the fact that it's a good device, if you will, to write about, to speak into people's lives. It's a good topic. Maybe it's a better word than device.
Sure.
It's just a topic that's rife with opportunities because there's just so much emotion around that. Probably, I guess what I'm trying to say is summed up by a great quote that I read once. It said, they talked about my drinking, but they never talked about my thirst.
Right. Great line.
Right?
Great line, by the way.
Yeah, that's a great line. And, writing an appointment at EMI with a woman named Hunter Davis. And
sure.
She pulled out an article from the New York Times that was interviewing a man who was the owner of a bar that was being closed. The bar was being closed, shut down, after 50 years or something because of some kind of, the things that happens. You own
sure.
a bar, but you don't own the lease, right? Somebody wants to turn the building into high rises or something, and so you lose your lease.
Mm-hmm.
So it was interviewing this guy. It was about the gentrification of this part of New York City. And so this guy, it said in the interview, it said that this, it really was such a sad thing. It made this guy cry. And so Hunter's reading me the article, and we looked at each other and we both kind of laughed and said, "Man, you're in trouble with the Bartender Cries." And we both started laughing about it.
Yeah.
Suddenly we looked at each other when we said it, and it was like the big aha went off, and we went, "Oh my goodness, that's a killer song title."
I see the light bulb over your heads as the line comes out.
Yeah, so we wrote a version of it, and of course we were, I was maybe, I don't know, a month or two away from the making of the album, and I thought this song was a candidate, but the funny thing I realized was, when you hear the chorus for the first time and you hear that hook for the first time, it's like it floors you.
Sure.
But it's like a joke in the sense that, when you hear a joke, if you hear the joke the second time, it doesn't have the same impact on you.
Right.
Because it says you're basically repeating the same thing. And I just had this feeling in my craw that said, it's not going to work as well if the chorus is identical every time. So over that month, I think about the only thing I focused on prior to the album was trying to make the second chorus and the third chorus all unfold so that the story would continue to unfold, so that every time you heard, you're in trouble in the Bartender Cries, it would have a new slight nuance to it or context.
Sure.
And so it was, I don't know, it was maybe the week before we went in to make the album that I went to my producers, Robert and Josh, and said, "I think I got it." And I played it for them, and they loved it, and they said, "Oh, I think you got it." So, I mean, it was just sort of right up to the wire, and it was this passion that I had to try to help it not just repeat itself over and over again, but to take it somewhere. And I think that's part of why people love that song to this day.
Nothing wrong with a great storyteller, and Michael, you fit that mold perfectly. You took it from beginning, and you kind of left the door open as well. So it was a wonderful release, and don't mind playing it. It's a great song. So again, a feather in your cap. You use the word that I use all the time. If you were to follow me, my personal page on Facebook, you will see the hashtag blessed or hashtag gratitude. You and your wife received so many accolades for your service to those that serve us. So I want to publicly say thank you for your service and thank you for continuing to do what you do for the U.S.O., for our veterans, and for those that are actively serving. It from my heart and my wife, Mary. I don't know if you're aware, we do a thing called Military Mondays. We have been
Yeah.
giving to, our slogan is serving those that serve us. Thank you for what you do, and explain to the audience what it is you do.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for you and your wife for all you've done to assist service members. You know, in a nutshell, when 9/11 happened, I wanted to help some way, but I was too old to join the military. And so I right around that time, I heard this great quote from Teddy Roosevelt that said, all of us as Americans have an obligation to do what we can with what we have, wherever we are.
Amen.
And I just thought, well, I'm a singer and a songwriter and an entertainer. Maybe I could use that somehow. So I just told my agent, if there's an opportunity to do something with the military, I don't need to get paid. Just, tell me and I'll go. An opportunity opened up for me to do an event at Fort Campbell. They didn't have a budget. I went anyway. While I was there, the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army was there. His assistant at the end asked me for my card. A week later, I got a call from the Director of Strategic Operations or Strategic Communications for the Army and said, can you come to D.C.? We want to meet with you and talk about some things that we might do together. So that was where it started for me. And over the course of the next 4 years or so, I just, said to them, look, I don't know a lot about Army culture, but if you'll let me, hang around, I'll learn, right? So in the process of, going to events and doing, presentations and singing and entertaining on behalf of the U.S. Army, I just made a lot of really wonderful friendships and relationships because I wasn't a contractor. I wasn't looking, to make money off of it. So a lot of doors opened up to me. And that led to me meeting this woman who's now my wife. Essentially, she was working for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. So a lot of doors opened up for me because I was just willing to serve.
Sure.
And so that was really the spirit of it. And, as you go forward to now, my wife is a survivor of the Pentagon attacks at 9/11. She had post-traumatic stress. And in the heels of all of that, she became a subject matter expert in helping people with post-traumatic stress because she learned how to heal herself. To this day, every year, there's probably anywhere from a dozen to as many as 40 service members or are looking for assistance in the area of post-traumatic stress.
Right.
And my wife is really a subject matter expert and a thought leader in the area of dealing with those issues with a non-pharmaceutical approach. And so my wife speaks all over the world on this as a subject matter expert, and I go along with her and do what I've always done with the military, which is express my gratitude, share music that's uplifting, that is relevant from a messaging standpoint. So, that's what we do is we work with veterans organizations, the Institute for Veterans and Military Families in Syracuse University. We do a lot of things with them, helping veteran entrepreneurs to start new businesses. So, what do I have to do with that? Well, I go to these events and I bring music and entertainment. My wife brings her abilities as a public speaker and as a subject matter expert in PTS.
Sure.
And we do these things around the world. And that's really what we end up doing. So if anybody is listening to your show that says, wow, I'd like to know more about how to deal with post-traumatic stress in a non-pharmaceutical way, they could easily find my wife at This Able Vet. So THIS Able Vet, VET, thisablevet.com. And that's my wife's website, and you can learn about what she does. And we don't do it for money. It's not something that we do to pay our bills.
Sure.
It's something that we do. My wife's received a lot of grants, so we do a lot to help people get tools and resources that need help, that are having trouble sleeping, having trouble dealing with finding a new normal.
Michael Peterson, as a fan, thank you. As a colleague, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us here on the Hot Country Podcast. God bless the both of you. Thank you for your service to our country and our countrymen, and it's been an honor.
Well, Chris, thank you for your service and your wife's service to our country and our countrymen, and I look forward to meeting you in person when you come here for NFR.
Thanks for listening, and be sure to visit hotcountrypodcast.com for information on sponsors and interview opportunities. The Hot Country Podcast, available everywhere you download podcasts, and is aired on country radio across North America.